Good evening and welcome to our part two of our group meeting on child abuse. First of all, let's recap a little bit on part one. Did anybody remember to bring back their handout from part one? If not, maybe you can just tell me. Do you remember some of the things that we talked about in part one?
We learned about child neglect.
Okay, very good. We learned about child neglect. Okay, now our topic for tonight is going to be child sexual abuse. Okay, now we know that a lot of feelings that comes with the sexual abuse in a child would be the feeling of guilt and shame. When you think about sexual child abuse, you think about a child being touched in an inappropriate place. Sexual abuse is not always touching. Sexual abuse can be a child that is exposed to a sexual television program, or they can be exposed to materials, or as some people might call them, sex toys. But I hope that the children do not understand what sex toys are. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to talk about is the shame and guilt, okay, in a child. Okay, now a child grows up with shame feelings because of an inappropriate thing, touch, or feeling that a parent did to the child when the child was younger. Okay, now, and then the child will grow up with an inability to form a relationship because that child does not trust a grown up. Do anybody have any remarks or anything to say about sexual abuse in a child? Okay, then let's go on and see if we can recognize some signs. And we're going to recap over the emotional child abuse, physical abuse, child neglect, and sexual abuse. And then we're just going to talk about maybe one person can take one abuse and then maybe tell us, what warning signs that they would recognize. And first of all, let's talk about the warning signs of emotional abuse. Anybody want to tell us a warning sign of emotional abuse?
Fearful.
Okay, fearful. When a child is fearful. Okay, and then let's go to physical abuse. What is the number one sign that you would think of when you think about physical abuse?
Bruises, whips, and cuts.
Bruises, whips, and cuts. Some kind of visible sign to a child's body. Okay, and then let's go to the warning signs of neglect, child neglect.
Clothes are ill-fitting.
Okay, clothes are ill-fitting. That means the clothes can either be too tight, or the clothes can be too big.
Body odor.
Body odor. And a lot of times you would think that a child is not taking a bath. The parents are not bathing the children, on a regular basis. And therefore they will have a body odor. Okay, and then the signs of sexual abuse would be, anybody?
Unsupervised or left alone.
Okay, unsupervised or left alone. Okay, that's a very good warning sign, especially during the time now when a lot of children are getting off the school bus and the parents maybe are at work, and you can see that a child is going to in the home and staying until the parent come home from school. That's most definitely is what we would call child neglect. Okay, but I think I asked for a warning sign of sexual abuse, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can anybody give me a sign for sexual abuse?
Having trouble walking or sitting.
Okay.
Runs away from home.
And runs away from home. Okay, now all of those are signs of sexual abuse. And then if you can remember when we first opened up tonight's discussion, we talked about that sexual abuse is not just touching. Sexual abuse can also be if a child is exposed to the sexual movies on TV, or even what we would call sexual paraphernalia. A sexual toy, excuse me. That was not a good word for the leader to discuss, but excuse me, sexual toy. Okay, now, at the end of this discussion, we're going to take what we call a myth and a fact sheet. And then we're going to sort of like turn this into a game. And I'll call out a myth or I'll read something and you let me know if it's a myth or is it a fact. Okay, now I did have a timekeeper. Can you tell me how our time is going, my timekeeper?
We got 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes. Okay. It is only abused if it's violent.
Myth.
Myth, okay. Physical abuse is just one type of child abuse. Neglect and emotional abuse can be just as damaging, and since they are most soluble, others are less likely to intervene.
Fact.
Only bad people abuse their children.
Myth.
Children abuse doesn't always happen in good families.
Myth.
Okay, most child abusers are strangers.
Myth.
Okay, and we discussed that, and I think in part 1, and we were telling you that child abuser could be a caregiver or a close relative. Okay, and abused children always grow up to be abusers.
Myth.
Myth, okay? Not always just because you were abused do you grow up to be an abuser. Okay. It is true that abused children are more likely to repeat the cycle as adults, unconsciously repeating what they experienced as children.
Fact.
Fact. Okay, yes, that is the cycle that if you are abused or as a child, more than likely you will abuse your child or other children simply because that feeling has grown up in you and you don't understand if that's a feeling of and when you are a child, if that's an acceptable feeling or an unacceptable feeling. Okay, so how's our timekeeper?
You got 2 minutes.
Okay, now for the last 2 minutes of our group section, I will just take this time to just reflect. Is it anybody in particular that have or something that they're unclear about child abuse? Any comments that you would like to make? And if so, take this last couple of minutes of our group session to do so.
What if you see this type of behavior at school?
Okay, if you see this type of behavior at school, what you need to do, you need to either tell your teacher or tell some kind of adult. Do not confront another child about child abuse, child neglect, anything like that because it could cause a problem. Make sure you go and talk to an adult about it, okay? Do we have any more reflections?
No.
No more reflections? Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you so very much for coming to this group meeting tonight. Okay, I will let you know, we'll probably send out flyers to let you know what the next topic will be, where the next meeting will be held, and what time the next meeting will be. Good night to everybody, and everybody have a good evening.